visual image. It was just funny. I just really liked cinematography for the previous one. But anyway, for that thumbnail. Anyway, so let's continue. And I feel Hayden's acting was so slow that he failed to deliver both the emotional level and the romantic level. So emotionally with his mom, and then romantically with Rachel's character Millie. With Rachel doing all the talking and Hayden just nodding, and it seems a very one-sided relationship. And Rachel's character Millie was too perfect. I did not see any flaws in her. From when we see her in high school, she does most things right. For instance, when that bullies Hayden's character, like she goes and slaps the bully. So she's always doing perfect things. So that was the difference between the Ryan Reynolds movie that I felt the girl he was into in Just Friends, like she wasn't perfect. You know what I mean? She was average, but that made her character interesting, and I have this analogy of puppets, and maybe I'm influenced by like some French song I found from the 60s about puppets. But anyway, what I'm saying is that David is emotionally stunned, while Millie is like intellectually stunned, and Millie tries to bring out emotion from David, and that's an alright job. Well, David tries to like make Millie understand what he's supposed to do with the whole jumper ability and him being chased by paladins, but still she doesn't get it. He hasn't explained it that well, to be fair. But you guys see what's going on. Like, in a way, I feel the puppet metaphor applies very well, because in a way, the whole movie, David just carries Millie from one place to another, and she just follows him. Well, there's no reason why she should follow him. I feel up to the second act where David takes her to Rome. It worked until then. You know, she was asking the right questions and things were developing. But then at that point, he just carried her around. Like, there was no reasoning behind his actions. And she just said no, or I don't know. No, the whole jail thing in Italy, it reminded me of Playing the Soleil with Alain Delon. But I felt Alain did it much better, and the actors there did it much better. Well, here there was no tension, and then the way the tension was broken with David's mom, it just made it nonsensical, because it seems like it haven't built up that we should get that, you know? Like, we haven't built up to that point where we were supposed to make that connection with David's mom. But anyway, he feels like he doesn't interact and isn't part of the scene. Had David done this, it would have made a much more interesting movie. Instead, he just carries her around and she follows. And doll, you know, and then this idea of dolls, you know, more than puppets. Like, David is Millie's emotional doll, and Millie is David's physical doll, because he's always carrying her around. Like, even in this picture, you know, and he hasn't explained, and we don't get to know their relationship. It has potential, but we don't develop it. For instance, in Spider-Man 2, which I hail as an example of how to do this right, we see Peter and Gwen's relationship, and it's developed much better. Like, we get it why they like each other. Well, here, that chemistry might be there, but it's just not, like, we don't buy it, you know, because it's not developed. But anyway, the secondary characters are both great. In contrast with this, I thought Jamie as Griffin, he's likable and relatable, and he gives depth to what it means to be a jumper. So for people who might think I criticize British filming with the last film, That's not true, because I thought Jamie, for instance, here did a great job, and he has done a great job in other things. It was just that movie, How to Talk to Girls, which I thought like the creative team wasn't doing things right. But here, Griffin, he's likable, he's relatable, he gives depth to what it means to be a jumper. He says what he walks to film all around. So I felt this detail, and probably that the director Doug Lingman, he also notices this, that it just gives extra weight to that character. It just makes us think that there's a psychology behind that character. And Jamie, maybe he's doing method acting, but he has truly internalized what it means to be a jumper. And he says, what would a jumper do in this type of situation? So it added more gravity to his portrayal. And speaking of cars, I like that he's stealing and using fast cars. He adds this element of excitement to the film. Moreover, I like that he's doing all these things solo and being a James Bond type of figure, where he takes out piloting enemies on his own. So I was watching some James Bond movies, Goldfinger and others, and I liked how Bond was just traveling around the world and going after his enemies. Well, here Jamie's doing something different, similar. Griffin, and meanwhile, Samuel L. Jackson as Roland fits the bill. He does a great job, and I can tell Roland is obsessed with taking out jumpers. You can see it in the apartment when his body language tells you, I got you. And he gets very excited, and also in a way sort of judgmental, but not that wrong judgmental, but more righteous judgment. That one we saw in Pulp Fiction, where he interprets that the character there, he takes joy out of taking out his enemies, even at his own expense. The character he's playing, and people might say, oh, Roland is derivative from Pulp Fiction, but it works. Even if it might be a bit derivative, there's a sense this guy is so blinded by his fanatism that he's willing to put himself at risk for the thrill of accomplishing his goal. Hence why he makes for a likable antagonist. And I felt Roland was likable, like there's no much we could criticize, and Griffin was likable. So what I'm trying to say, guys, if we have Roland, we save Roland for the next picture. We have Jamie as Griffin, we have Hayden as David, and then we have Millie, and we truly focus on their story. We leave the man for the next picture, which I felt intuitively Doug was trying to do, because we didn't see much of her. But if we just focus on that, then at least we have a story, and it won't feel rushed, and let Griffin take his time and explain to us why he's the way he is and more. But anyway, the film should have taken more time. Griffin tells us the plot, however, I feel that they could have done more. For instance, maybe a few more flashback scenes and even a montage explaining a mythology, or le montage. I feel that je parle français quand je besoin, nécessité. I feel we get David's personal story, but should have gotten a bit more of the jumper story. I heard that it was possible that all of this information was being saved by a future film. I read a lot of interviews, and they all said that they were trying to save for the next film. However, I would have liked to and at least get a sneak peek at this episode. Another thing that he felt rushed was the relationship between David and Millie. As I said, guys, this was very rushed. I felt that they needed at least a few more heartfelt scenes to flesh out the relationship. We instead are left with David dragging Millie and her questioning the purpose of the relationship. And this was frustrating because we didn't get to see more of the relationship. Like, he just met her and now he wants to save her, but we don't, and they don't make a connection. And even, actually, this is the first time that the flashback ruins it instead of strengthening things. Because, like, the flashback of Millie, her character is too perfect in that film. Like, I felt that it's cool that got it, that, but I felt her character just doesn't work, Maybe they would have had a more contentious relationship, it would have worked better. But because Millie acts so perfect, and then here she also acts perfect, although it's a bit ameliorated, like, I felt it didn't work. Honestly, I felt it was too rushed for us to connect with the relationship. The other part which could have been cut out is David's mother. I already explained this. We already had an emotional center with Millie, in which he should have stayed with her to develop her fully. So actually, like, some people said that CGI scene was confusing because the actor that portrays David looks very similar to Hayden and they seem like the same age. I also thought it was a bit odd, the flashback scene. It honestly was a bit confusing. They could have used CGI if they wanted, and to just show Hayden younger, possibly, and Millie, it just doesn't work. So I felt that the CGI was confusing. Like, it felt more like Uncanny Valley, where like it's just odd and he looks sort of like Hayden, but not quite. So it was a bit confusing. Honestly, I could have just done fine without the flashback. Instead, we could have just started with David stealing from the bank and then taking it from there. Because if it just isn't working, honestly, even though the idea is cool, they should have cut it out. So anyway, the whole "kill your darlings" expression. Anyway, good film. Although the tone feels uneven, at the same time, I feel that the heart is in the right place for so okay. So this was for my previous review. I don't know why it was added here, but like, my conclusion of this is, alright guys, I liked the film, but it felt rushed, and I liked the connections between David and Millie, but again it felt rushed. I liked the story. I praised Duke Lingman for being able to integrate this idea of paladins, and Kingsbury as well, because I know he wrote X-Men, so there's a bit of X-Men there. This idea of paladins versus jumpers, that's a mythology. We have a starting point. We have Roland, who is likable, but he could have been maybe just teased on this film and saved for the next one. And then we have Griffin, a very interesting guy, and we could have just had a more mirror stories where you have David on one hand and then you have Griffin on the other, and both their lives have been different because maybe David has been trying to become good and not steal, while Griffin has just embraced it. So we could have delved into the narrative of what it means to be a jumper. And then for the next story, we could have just focused on the idea of jumpers versus paladins, and just focus much more on that and that contrast. So here we just needed to get to know Millie. Honestly, you know what? Why, guys? And this is something I realized, because with Millie, we've known her for a long time since she was young. It feels like we don't need David's mom. That in a way, Millie is filling in for David's mom, and she works just fine. Like, for some reason, I felt like I didn't need neither David's dad, neither his mom. Like, I didn't feel that, oh, we really need it. Like, this is an emotional point. And for some reason, he also feels like an adult because, oh, he has his girlfriend and she's giving him all this emotional support than his mom would have. So for some reason, I felt that way. I don't know if you guys felt that way, where the emotional needs that David needed were already met with this girl, Millie, because she's backing him up. Like, she's doing a lot for him, and she's very understanding. So I felt that she fits that, and maybe because Rachel does a very motherly role in a way, because she's helping him. So I felt, well, why would he need his mom if he already has Rachel, Millie? And anyway, my friends, so make sure you subscribe if you like. And I like doing these 2 episodes because I'm breaking it down much further. I thought with the first one I explained more of the plot details, while in the second one I just go more with my observations. It's a bit more free-flowing. And expect the next film, most likely Cruel Intentions, because you guys really like it and you've been requesting it for me. So Cruel Intentions, and then The Dreamers, because I really like that film. So be on the lookout. Make sure you subscribe. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next video. Take care.